This is happiness, to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Mood Prep. My name is Dave Nixon, and today I would like to talk about Are You OK Day. Now, I know I'm a couple of days late or a couple of weeks late on Are You OK Day, which is kind of the point, because I want to highlight out of the 365 days there are in the year, and I know everyone understands what I'm talking about, but I'm still going to point to it. We need to be checking on people, and more importantly, checking on ourselves more often than that. It needs to be a conversation continually. And this is an important thing to understand about mental health, is that when I say mental health, more often than not, that carries this sort of negative connotation to it. The depression, anxiety, any other sort of terms associated with that. When I talk about physical health, it more often has this societal viewpoint of the positive side of it, you know, being physically fit, having muscles, whatever the case might be, right? Going to the gym. One of the key things we first need to do is get rid of the negative stigma behind just simply saying mental health, right? I mean, like, to have physical health but not mental health means that you're not healthy anyway. Let's just outline that. So the difficulty with the mental health is that so much of it is subjective, and in today's world, if you can't measure it objectively with science and everything else, then it doesn't really fucking exist, and it's not true, right? There's plenty of things subjectively that exist that we aren't able to explain objectively. Now, that doesn't mean that science is any way faulty, although technically everything is, but not in a bad way. It's just simply pointing at the fact that there are subjective truths and objective truths, right? And so one of the biggest things for the mental health space is to make sure that we are continually able to have a conversation on mental health from the positive side of things as well, right? Now, the difficulty is that because it hasn't been talked about for so long, or it wasn't really anything, people just got the SADs or whatever, then it carries the societal stigma of it's a negative connotation conversation. I've been struggling in silence and etc. Now, there's a couple of things that we want to look at with this, right? And this is my extension for you. Let me frame it with everything, the conversation today with this. If you need to talk, if there's things there and you don't know how to, I'm always ears for sure, right? But the thing is that it's so much easier to listen to an hour of somebody learning to unpack, right? Because it's like, I don't know what's wrong. It's like learning to unpack. And that's the thing about therapy or psychologists or coaches, is that once again, we see this as almost like it's a negative thing, right? It's like having to buy tires. No one goes, oh, I really want to buy new tires for the car. Like, fuck the tires, I've got to get them done again, right? And so often this idea of psychology or therapy or counseling or performance coaching or developmental coaching has that sort of stigma around it. Whereas when we talk about a physical coach or a physical strength and conditioning coach, it's almost like there's a certain level of status and proudness that goes with that, right? And so that's another thing that we need to address, is that the subjective space of our mind is so complex. Right. If we understood it all, our brains would be so big that we couldn't understand them. Like, it's so ridiculous. And so the idea that you're meant to know is simply false. And it's probably one of the reasons why you're still in a space of struggle, because you have this frame potentially that you're meant to know. You should be good by now. Something's wrong. Nothing's wrong with you. Every one of us is wired the exact way that we wired ourselves to be. So the first thing is that if somebody has some sort of confusion, has some sort of misunderstanding or lack of awareness at a particular area in their life, going to see a counselor or a therapist or a psychologist or a coach is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength, right? And this is I saw this pop up on social media the other day, is that in the past that they used to see, this person shared, but I can see this person saying it, they used to see that asking for help was a sign of weakness, whereas now they see asking for help as a sign of strength. And the reason being is that we're stronger together, right? And the challenges that we ourselves are going through are actually all quite similar. I mean, the details are different. Of course, we're all an individual. I get that. But at the same time, the ability to get support to navigate through our subjective truths and our subjective frames of mind as structures that we hold in mind is one of the most powerful and beneficial things we can do to truly understand ourselves on a deeper level. The field of psychology and any other field that stems from that is so diverse and for so many reasons. And so one of the biggest things about the Are You OK Day is looking at the certain level of responsibility that we have personally to go, hang a sec, I'm not okay, and to put our hand up and you know, maybe we have to do it publicly. Maybe that's the way that you personally need to go about it to be able to get yourself out of a really difficult situation. Or maybe it is that you need to reach out to somebody that you trust and you feel safe with, that can help point in a direction that's going to be beneficial for you. But like I was saying before, it's like sitting through and listening to an hour of somebody unpack their shit, right? And I say shit as in just content in their mind, really, more than anything, is so much easier to sit through than a 15-minute eulogy, right? And this is the truth and the reality for so many of us is that and I've been there. I've been in the space where I'm like, well, it would make sense for me to end it, right? It's like, I remember convincing myself that other people would be like, yeah, that makes sense, right? And it's so fascinating because I was like so sure of it at that stage in my life. And I was like, well, I knew that I didn't want to do that. I knew I didn't want to do that, but it was so hard and I felt so helpless at that stage in my life that was like a fucking one of the options of my multiple choices that I had. And I was like, look, you know what? Let me write a book. And if I'm still useless then to humanity or whatever thing I said to myself, it sounds funny saying it out loud, then it makes sense to just finish it up, wind it up. And that goal, setting the goal and target of actually doing something such as writing a book, even though actually, well, this year I wrote the book. But even though this first came online for me, I think about 4 or 5 years ago. It was definitely 4 or 5 years ago. And it gave me something to focus on to get myself out of the hole, right? Because we all have a responsibility when we're struggling to put our hand up, like I said, but also to go, hang on a sec, am I doing everything in my power? Am I doing everything in my power? Learning all the things around my mind, right? Doing all the exercises that I possibly could to get myself out of this funk, right? Or am I not doing anything and hoping that some pills are going to fix it for me, right? Or that blaming somebody else because they're not supportive enough, right? Now, there's having support and having pills can be beneficial to get us out of a situation, absolutely. But if we ourselves aren't supporting ourselves, then we're not doing what we could. We're not doing what we could to help us, because ultimately, to get ourselves out of that position, it's us, it's ourselves that need to be able to help ourselves. We can't help someone unless they're willing to help themselves. And so in this space of this Are You OK Day, and now that the whole festiveness of that Are You OK Day has dwindled down, my offer for you is that if you are struggling, or if you want me to point you in a direction that may be beneficial for your own development, own understanding, then by all means reach out. This is my offer for you. You don't have to do it once a year. There's not like a 24-hour window where that's an opportunity or a possibility. I'm happy to point in whatever direction that I can. I'm happy to support in whatever direction with my capacity that I can. And that's the truth. And I offer that for everyone. The reason being is that there's people that did support me and did help me through that period as well. And there's people that did the opposite, but they were looking after themselves. That's not their fault, because it's not their job to look after me. It's my job. And so understanding all of that, the last thing I'll leave this podcast, leave with you when I finish up this podcast, my English is there, I promise, is that the moment we take responsibility for our own health, physical and mental, is a moment when we start to actually own our life. Up until that point, we are often victim to the things that happen that we think to us, rather than the fact that life happens for us. On that note, team, I'm done. I hope you found this podcast very beneficial. And if you found this podcast beneficial and you know someone else that you think also would, it would mean the world to me if you'd pass it on to them. Otherwise, team, you know the drill. Until tomorrow, peace and pizza. kick today in the dick, slay the dragon. I'll see you soon.
Happiness to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.